This meeting will come to order. Good evening, and leading our pledge tonight will be Mr. Jeff Sandvik.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Sandvik. Again, welcome everyone to budget meeting, the first of several meetings we'll be holding over the next several weeks. You know, I'm not sure if this is one that we want to do on a full stomach or an empty stomach. So I guess each to his own.
Place to start.
Yep. Mr. Odom, we'll let you run with it.
Okay, this is your, while you've heard some general numbers and percentages, this is your first look at a line item by line item budget. So probably it's going to be one of those things you're going to take home and sit down in your chair and look at in more detail. But we need to point out some things and issues and some targets to take a look at. I'm going to start, if we could, by this one, the sheet, the white sheet that's Rutherford County Schools Budget Committee agenda. Let's take a look at that, and we can kind of talk about that. I usually do not read to you unless it's a motion or something like that, but I think we need to take a look at this tonight because there's some pieces that will then show up on the number part of it that's on the screen, and all it will be your other. So let's talk a little bit about that. What's built into this budget? That's what we need to talk about. Budget's about 6.7% higher than the 14-15 budget. The 14-15 was $306.8 million. And of course, now our numbers are so large that 2, 3, 6% create large numbers. So here's what's in it. What staff, we have a 1.7% increase in positions and a 4.9% increase in dollars. This includes a 2.6 cost of living raise and a 1.34 for the step raises built into our salary schedule. The most recent news from the state still includes a 4% raise on the BEP instructional salary factor, $42,065 versus $44,447. Our system will not receive $1,618 for each teaching position generated by the BEP formula. We'll get a little less than half the cost of the 4% raise because of the average teacher salary, the positions that are above the BEP that's funded, not generated in that. So you get a little bit less than that when you apply it. Also, the other side of it that you know that maybe 50% of a teacher's salary is state and 50% may be the local piece, you know, so the state doesn't pay our part, you know. So that's what creates your numbers again, if you try to make it overall. So that's kind of what we're working with now. Jeff will not get, on the 11th of April, he has a meeting where he's supposed to kind of get a BEP estimate from that. The meeting that they have where they really nail the numbers down really doesn't occur till May. But, you know, it depends on what the legislature does with their budget. So, again, we'll track that and watch that. We're tonight concentrating more on the spending side needs because we don't really know what the revenue pieces are yet. You just don't know. We do know sales tax is up a little. Lisa Nolan will help us with that. Number 2 there is really, really critical. So there's still conversation engaged here. Medical insurance. The draft that you have before you is an 8% increase that will become effective January the 1st, 2016. The commission has already voted to move what we pay towards dependent coverage from 86% to 85% beginning in January 16. The change will make the total increase 15.7% or more for people on the dependent coverage. So we're running into the same thing that's happening all over. There's about almost $4 million in this piece here when you talk about the increase because of the number of employees that we have. And that'll show up as a line item on the next budget. You can see it. The real issue is, though, while we built in at 8% what we're thinking now, there are insurance meetings coming up, next line, Right now, we're hearing from the insurance office that there may be as much, instead of 8%, 13.4% increase, unless there's some changes in the plan. And again, if that were to happen, then instead of 15.7 for your employees, dependents, you're 21.5%. I'm dropping now. I attended several of the budget sessions last year with the commission, and their goal is to reduce what the county pays from, it's going from 86 to 85 down to 80. That was their goal. There was a motion actually last year, Mr. Jordan, you can correct me, I think, to try to move 2% or so in a year to get to the 80% more quickly. That didn't pass last year, but it would not surprise me at all for that a motion or something similar to that come to reduce the county general's part of what they pay and more pay to the people, basically your employees. So I mean that very well may come up, but they did pass it that it goes down from this 86%, 1% per year is the standing motion now. Am I correct, Mr. Jordan?
Yes, sir.
On that? So unless they change that, you know, you got about 5 more years or 6 to kind of deal with that, unless they decide to accelerate it. Going down to the next line, the additional 5.4 percentage points would add again another 1.6 million to the number you're seeing this evening. The Medical Insurance Committee meets this Thursday to examine rates, and so Mr. Sandvig will be there, Ms. Barnes will be there, you may go, and I think, Virginia, you usually go for that committee. We're outvoted in that one, but we'll be there to see. For calendar 2014, this is a really interesting figure, and it's what's happening to businesses all over the country. For calendar 2014, the board paid $40.7 million for active employee medical insurance. 2013, it was 33.5. In 2012, it was 29.6. So you're going from 29.6 in 2 years up to 40.7. And the budgeted retiree insurance is for 14-15 is 2.7 million. So you're seeing some of the same thing that we're hearing about in the news. The other piece that really shows up this evening is the technology. We were notified, of course, by the state last fall that we were thinking that Windows XP machines would handle the new online testing, which is English language arts and math, and some social studies maybe, although that's not fully decided. But no longer will our XP computers work. You've got to have at least Windows 7. So when you start looking at numbers for that, and we have the calculations and have it by school, the budget has, this budget you're looking at tonight, $3.15 million to fund the additional computer labs we will need for online testing. The budget draft also gets us back on track with a technology replacement cycle so that we're in better shape in the future. And I don't know how much better shape, because I think your cycle's about 15 years or something, and it won't last that long. You know, we had one, it was 10 years a number of years ago. So this really concerns me. I mean, not only the online testing for our kids, but what's going to happen here? If the minimum number that you're supposed to have that they measure against for the Windows 7 machines, you're supposed to be able to test 1/2 of your largest grade, or your in elementary, middle, or 1/2 of your largest group, Algebra 1 or whatever it is, or English, one of those, simultaneously. So you're going to have half that machines. The thing that really concerns me in this is we're going to be testing some students in order to meet the window. The state's going to be a window so many days. You have to work all of your students in those groups. So one of the things that worries me, Mr. Spurlock, is we're going to be testing students at not the optimal times of the day. You're going to have to run some kids through an elementary and high school in afternoon testing sessions. Typically where we did paper and pencil, you know they're fresher in the morning, you know that's the time. That will have some impact on scores. I can't tell you how much, but I can tell you it'll have some impact. When you're just trying to cycle, and we'll work on schedules, we're going to bring in principals, we're going to work on ways so that we're doing the same thing everywhere. But this only works if we get this money so that we're up to testing half of the students in the highest grade or the subject at one time. That's a requirement. I think I can hear unfunded mandates, again, Mr. Jordan, from one of our commissioners at least, but that's something the state's doing. Another issue, when you have so many kids, because the testing window is the same for elementary and middle, then for high school, which is a little later with the end of course test, because you have so many testing, your internet bandwidth becomes an issue for us. So if you'll look on that one, Technology Department would like to upgrade the internet bandwidth for Rutherford County School Districts from the current 1.2 gigabytes to a 10 gigabyte connection. This upgrade will assist with the bandwidth requirements for online testing. The current cost that we pay for 1 gigabit is $15,500 per month, but a 10 gigabit, 10 times more, is $22,250. So it kind of makes sense there, because you certainly do not want your bandwidth to be an issue that they can't, that becomes something in the test. So the increase is $6,750 per month, and a one-time cost for the upgrades, equipment, and things like that is somewhere between $7,700 and $10,900. The state of Tennessee's anticipated discount rate of 76% will be deducted from the proposed cost per month. Therefore, the district's cost per month is really $5,340. So it's a little cheaper than that $6,000. E-rate, is that for the people that's listening to us maybe on TV, is that thing that appears on your telephone bill sometime and all, and some of the federal charges that go with it? It's a federal E-rate charge that was designed to try to fund for public education some of the monies back for that. So that's what that is when you look at that. Now, let me stop before we go to the numbers page, and what would you like to talk about in 1, 2, 3, and we'll talk about that, and then we'll look at some actual numbers. Maybe the conversation starter when you look at this. So.
Mr. Holliday.
Commendable, Chairman, for your participation in the Insurance Committee and our familiarity with that when we're talking about the potential of changes in that plan. Are there any changes that we would necessarily get ahead of the curve and endorse or advocate? Are there any things that we would like to send along with this budget that we do find palatable or acceptable? Or if County Commission, you're going to make a change with the number of employees that we have being disproportionately large, I'd like for us to be a voice of influence to at least start that discussion if we view it inevitable that or likely that changes may occur.
I certainly want to give it as much thought as possible, because I'd certainly rather us suggest something that is not as distasteful as what our funding body might suggest. So, but there's not a great deal of options out there that I'm aware of.
True.
So, that would actually,
Estimates are made basically from usage.
yeah.
How much funding is coming in, and how much you're paying out. And so they project into the future to do that. So when you start seeing the double-digit increases, potential for double-digit increases here, it really adds up to big numbers very, very quickly.
Well, and we're mirroring, like I think you said in the past, Mr. Odom, mainstream business. All of their costs are up substantially. I think it's more, you've seen it, well, all of us in some form or fashion. I don't know that there's an easy answer, or it would be plain as nose on my face, but starting this process at this point gives us the opportunity to at least have conversation and to be thinking about alternatives, whatever those might be.
As employees, you get your paycheck, it comes home, you have to have your insurance, and most do not realize that on our share, we're putting in $40.7 million of your insurance to make that happen. So that's exactly what you're dealing with, and that number's going up, accelerating each growth, so. There's a whole number of options out there that probably the committee, I don't know whether the insurance committee will decide anything at this point. They may meet another time or two before they do it, and the commission kind of has to approve it, but, you know, it usually either means less insurance or employee pays more. I mean, when you get down to it, probably if they're trying to rectify these cost increases, not a lot of the places to get it.
I don't want to pick on any other portion of the county and their employees' participation or anything, but I know that we've heard a lot about our employees doing the screening process in order to save $30 or something like that and everything. And as we talk about this, to defend our employees and the manner in which they're engaged in the process, I might suggest that as we approach those committee meetings and such, that we say, look, 89%, 94% of our people are actively participating. I'm not necessarily disparaging any other department and how they're participating, but we're doing our part to be active users of this insurance policy, using the clinics that we have inside the county, you know, those type of things, in order to, you know, just make the point that we may be outvoted in that insurance committee, but we're not outmanned in using this service. And our voice on behalf of our employees really needs to be heard.
You know, and one of the things you're going to hear, well, why don't you switch to the state insurance? But it has not become much less attractive in the last couple of years. I don't know, Mr. Stanvig or Ms. Barnes may want to talk to that, because that's been a topic of discussion, which in the insurance meetings and with others. So if either one of you want to relate to that, I think it'll be fine.
And I have not looked at the rates, and I don't know if they've been released yet for January 2016. They may have been. But when I looked at last year's rates, our coverage cost less, and so the switch did not look that desirable. There is also one of the worst things we would face if we switched. Ours, we pay September through June, 10 installments. If we switch to the state's goes July through the end of June. It is a timing difference, but it would be real cash out to us, 2 months of premiums for both the employee and the employer. Because it would be money out to us. We are already paid for July and August at the end of this year.
The county general, would they be allowed, they wouldn't be allowed to go into the state plan?
There is a local government option under the state plan. I don't know that they would be interested in that.
There was something about paying your medicines itself to the state plan wasn't as attractive, and there was some of that talk, but I'm not up on it right now.
Well, the county general, without the school system, they become a pretty small group, and if they have much age in that group, then consequently their premiums are going to be even higher than they are presently. So, you know, I don't think our funding body would like for us to do that. Would you think that, with your past experience, Mr. Jordan?
I think you're correct on that. And I also would say that the county commission has been trying to get their contribution lowered at 2%, and then finally agreed on 1% per year. But just kind of pointing out here that I have no particular objection to that. It doesn't matter anyway. I'm not there anymore. But if you move that, it would be difficult, I would think, to move a percent of the increase to us, and then complain to us that our insurance costs, our budget costs went up, when evidently, according to this letter right here, a sizable part of this increase is because we're picking up that additional percent. Is that correct?
Our employees will.
Yeah, okay.
Independent
To your
coverage.
employees is
Okay.
giving you here, that's what
That is a small savings to us because the ratio this year, 14% if you have dependent coverage, employee pay. There's some variation there. 86% county and Board of Ed. So a 1 percentage point shift on our budget is fairly small. It is major for the employees going from 14 to 15%.
We attended a meeting, it's been maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, but about some things that could be dropped off the plan. And I believe you were there, Ms. Sandy. But, I mean, it was just, if you just drop 1 or 2 things off the plan, the savings were tiny.
There are some bigger things that can be done. We may well hear some of those Thursday. And, of course, we will keep you all updated on whatever directions appear to be coming. Mr. Odom and I discussed Friday whether or not to, it's pretty fast for me to pull together another version with the 13.4%, but since we haven't heard any suggestions at the insurance committee yet, we kind of decided we just leave it at this 8% increase for this week, and if we know more, we'll get another version out to you. If I may, Mr. Odom, and I think y'all hit on this, that increase from, and this includes the cafeteria fund and the federal projects. This was everything pulled from payroll, the 40.7 million versus the 29.6 million 2 years ago. That excludes our retiree insurance, which is another 2.7 million. The 2.7 isn't included in the $40 million number. And just this, our cost trends have been pretty good the last year and a half. There have been some ups and downs, but it's looking at the trends that they foresee out in the medical industry that are generating that 13.4%. So that's kind of where we are at this point.
But even in the individual market, between last January and this January, there was an average of between 25 to 30% increase. Someone who had purchased a year ago in January compared to what they're paying this January. So it was, again, I think 30 was pretty prominent as far as the rate increase. Of course, there are subsidies involved in that, so it's not as painful, but we don't have to have any of those. So.
Since the two are linked, just looking back at number 1 here, and the possible raises, what's coming from the state, et cetera, the teachers last year, the only money they got in addition was the amount of, what was it, 120 to help pay the insurance increase. So, I mean, I don't mind saying it out loud. They actually work for less. I'm not saying we did the wrong thing. I don't mean that. We were trying to help, but I'm just pointing out the obvious. That didn't cover the increase.
$40 million, that's $992 per student. And that's just, you keep trending that year after year. You gotta do something different. This ain't gonna work.
Well, the bottom line is that, you know, we can make suggestions. We can tell the funding body, you know, what we think, what we desire. But the bottom line again is that they make that final call. They're gonna tell us what we're gonna do from that aspect. So Mr. Holliday, your suggestion as far as, you know, trying to find something that we think would work, that would make our employees happier, and something that our funding body might come up with.
You know, it just kinda gets back to the same thing we talked about before. Roughly 80% of your budget's fixed costs, and you as a board can do almost nothing about it.
Yep.
It's just that fixed cost that's attached to it. You don't have a lot of discretionary choices that you can make when we get to a budget like that.
Mr. Jordan, you asked before the meeting started, for the 2013-14 school year, we had a 1.5% increase.
Okay, we're talking about in salary
Year before.
2 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess we'll probably say this numerous times, and in the next 2 or 3 months, so that the voice of Dr. Bullen continues to, I'll use the word haunt me, but he's a friend. But you take what we had. I'd like to know if this is generally a fair statement. You take what we've budgeted for this year. You add on what we're being made to do by the state of Tennessee, basically. You add automatic increases into things like benefits and these horrendous, Mr. Young just pointed out, insurance rates, and some other areas. And you total all that up, and you come out with this figure that's 21 million more. We haven't added anything. We haven't added any new programs. I'm not attacking you here. I'm just making sure that this statement is correct. We're just paying a whole lot more for what we got now and what we have been made to do.
And covering our growth.
And covering our growth, thank you, and our insurance rates and Social Security rate, whatever. And we end up with this figure right here. And I don't see much room right now, just today on this initial meeting, you know, that we can do much about any of that. Much. I don't know what we could do. Well, I know what we can. I know how we can cut it, and so do y'all. But it's horribly painful.
And always on this first version, there's not. Mr. Odom and I took out quite a few things. You try to err a bit on the high side. I don't anticipate, other than the medical insurance possibly going up that 1.6 million, there should be somewhat of a downward trend as I look at March and April numbers.
Your sales tax keeps growing. See, we do not have the revenue piece. So when you talk about new monies,
Yeah.
how much is really local monies?
Yeah.
Or how much really new revenue are you talking about? That we do not know at this point.
Well, and one of the new pieces we don't know, and I talked to Mary Ann Dursky last week, and I still don't, until I get that BEP estimate. I have a spreadsheet that is generally within a $250,000. I'm not coming out in my spreadsheet with as high as 4.2 million for that raise, but she assures me that is our number until I see that BEP estimate. Okay, what else is in there that has changed from the previous year? I won't know that.
When I came on the board, one of the topics that we discussed, seems like all the time, was the inability for anybody to understand the BEP formula.
Mm-hmm.
Are we still there, or do we still have a?
There are pieces of it. Now, when you get into the TASR and the Fox index, no. But the other pieces are fairly straightforward. It's easy to feud with some of the pieces. Our nurse it's easy to feud with some of the pieces.
Oh, okay.
Our nursing allocation is about a third of what we have. It generates 15, 17 positions. We have 47. Yeah, just as a glaring example of an area where it falls short. On certified positions, we probably have about 10% more certified positions than the BEP formula generates.
I don't think any school
No,
district
it's impossible.
uses the BEP because kids don't come in nice little groupings. You can't meet the pupil-teacher ratio
Well, and the cumulative unfunded mandates, RTI, when the additional high school math was required, things like that keep coming down the road. The BEP does not get modified for it. We just have to cover it. Pre-K, special ed pre-K, we have to offer. There is no funding piece. Some of it is through, there is an IDEA preschool grant. We have to fund the others out of GP money. We get nothing toward that from the state. The governor's preschools are largely grant funded.
You're talking about the special ed?
But the special ed
ones that we
preschools,
have to,
Yeah.
for 3-year-olds?
Yeah.
You don't have a choice.
we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Well, and the technology devices to test and the bandwidth to test
Yeah.
becomes an unfunded mandate.
Yes, oh, yeah.
So,
Let me say, he used the term that people that's listening to us on TV, absolutely probably not, the TASR and the Fox Index, is the ability to pay. And they're switching more to the Fox Index, which is one that comes out of UT. And unfortunately, Rutherford County is being viewed as being more able to pay than some other counties. So everybody doesn't get the same based on you got. You go through the formula, and the state's share changes based upon how you come out of the TASR and Fox division there. So, we won't get as much, and thank goodness we're not a county that doesn't have, we've got some counties that in the state don't have even a Walmart in the whole county. They really have trouble raising revenue. But when you stop and take a look at it with all of our growth and some of this revenue things, it also means they're going to reduce the amount you get as the state share. And that's what's going to happen.
When Mr. Estes and Ms. Moore and myself went to those seminars last year, they spent quite a bit of time. I don't have the notes in front of me right now, and they can help me out here if they want to. But Tennessee School Board Association spent quite a bit of time explaining the problems with the BEP. And the major problem, as I got it, was that you couldn't get it changed. If there was an obvious inequity within the system, that it was almost, well, they've been trying to get some things changed for a decade, seemingly, and they were unable to do it. And because the state was not going to pay more money, and they knew that.
I serve on the state BEP committee. They invite us down. I get to serve on it. One of the things, there's a bill in the legislature, one of the things that we asked for, actually made it priority number 1, was for teachers since 12 months, we get 10 months funding that the state pay for the other 2 because it's a continuing contract. They're not gone, but the insurance is still there. But the state doesn't pay for those other 2 months. But the fiscal note to that was $40 million plus. So will that pass through the state legislature this time? Probably not. But that's been out there for a long time. And many other things that we list, a whole priority of things, like the number of nurses, and when they say now because of certain medical conditions you must have a nurse to conduct that, which, so that's, there's lots of things in that list of the BEP that it's not nearly funded, and I hear figures, and that's true for a lot of things. This weekend I was listening to federal government called IDEA, the special ed part. The goal was that the feds would fund 40% of that. The fellow told us it's about 14 or 15% right now. So from every angle you get, it's not funded. And so we have to make up the difference. That's the issue. In the teacher salaries up there, there's certain things that you could do. You can take that $4 million from the state. You can, and again, it won't turn out $4 million until you take your number of employees that you have because you're over the BEP. You can take some of that and help pay insurance, but you're going to find it interesting just how much retirement changes, our share of retirement and all. You can help pay some of their insurance. The advantage to the teacher would be if they have insurance with us, that's not a taxable piece because, that's a fringe benefit. Whereas if they get $1 and they pay 25% or 28% or whatever tax they pay, they lose that full amount, where if it's in the insurance, it's a fringe benefit and you don't. So, but that's some of the collaborative conferencing things that we talk about that we need to start engaging in when you begin to talk about that. Because, I mean, again, there's ways you can slice the pie that sometimes is more beneficial.
I'm a little perplexed at what Mr. Young said, because he's so right. I don't, are there options for, are there choices on this insurance? He's right. I don't think there's any possible way this can go on indefinitely.
Wait, I agree.
It's soaking up money that ought to be spent on instruction.
One of the columnists that I heard at GFOA, he has since passed away, probably 12 years ago. His talk to us was on that our rate of increase in health insurance, health costs to our overall economy was not sustainable. And this was at least 12 years ago. One of the items that has come up before, when you're talking items with big dollars, the Affordable Care Act only requires that we offer insurance to our employees and their children. I don't think anyone would propose that we kick the spouses out. But another option, I mean, that came up as one of the dire and drastic things when we were looking at our number last year. No one wanted to do it, but that is something that would lower our costs, either or really jack up the rates that we charge the spouses. A lot of the people in that category are like me, a little bit older, husband and wife, wife employee and her husband's on our insurance, incurring higher costs now. Another option that was less drastic was, and we've had discussions on this, and we have seen employers of the spouses of our teachers in the 17 years I've been here go through this, where if the spouse has the possibility of getting insurance through his or her employer, he or she would have to go to that insurance. It's those kind of dire and drastic things, and a surcharge increasing the rates might not do it enough. Those are things that could lower our cost or lower the rate of increase short term. But I'm not sure we're not going to have to look at some dire and drastic. We always hope when we have that 20% increase or that 24% increase, things are going to change.
See, I think it might be appropriate and helpful for us to know before we go into that discussion, the two options that you just discussed about spouse versus high deductible HSA plans that, still everybody's on the same plan, but the deductible went way up. We got this HSA now, that kind of profile. Between those two, what would our employees find more attractive? And if we have that knowledge ahead of time, then we're not just subject to the county commission making a decision and us standing flat-footed. Not being able to say, well, if you're going to do something, that one's better than this one, or something of that nature. I don't want any of that to happen, but if we look at this and we can see it's unsustainable, it's inevitable, if we're at that place, I think we owe it to our employees to know, hey, we need to rank some of these bad scenarios.
I think you'll hear Thursday. I think when you go to the meeting, I would be surprised if they come out with some kind of a vote. But I think all those scenarios is what's going to come out.
Okay.
And I think it'll be to see how that's received, and commission-wise, as close as we can stay to what the county commission is for the other plans. We've just learned it's much better than to try to go off the other way, because if they decide to pay more, they say, well, you're not with us, but they tend to calculate in increased costs when we stay where they are. That's why
Yeah, yeah.
86% to 85, you know, we could go different than that, but do you really want to do that?
Oh, I'm not suggesting that we should do anything different than what happens elsewhere in the county. I'm just suggesting that we should drive the decision.
Well, part of that puzzle is maintaining a benefit package that's attractive to keeping our teachers.
Right.
Because we have so many excellent teachers that they're being, you know, they're being sought after by other systems, and if we let our benefit package get too out of whack, then we're going to have some attrition that we're not prepared for. Ms. Moore?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've actually got several questions, a couple things I'd like to talk about on the medical insurance, a couple questions for Mr. Sandvig, and I'll apologize in advance because I'm sure some of the things I'm going to ask are things that have already been discussed at your insurance meetings.
Or I'll have to get an answer for you, but
Okay.
I'll be glad to.
First of all, you mentioned earlier, it says this draft has an 8% increase in medical insurance, but said it could go to 13.
Right.
When do we anticipate having those final quotes to where we'll actually know what that increase is? Because that's a difference of almost $2 million.
Oh, yes. Thursday, when I talked to Miss Street Thursday, I got back in the office in time to catch, she caught me just as I walked in. They were still revising numbers, but they felt that 13.4 was probably our starting point that we would be addressing this Thursday at the meeting.
Okay. Do they have a final deadline as to when the quotes have to be
Well,
finalized?
since we're self-insured, it's more our decision on what rates we are going to set. I don't think we are going out for bid on our stop loss and those pieces other than the
Okay.
above and beyond our self-insured piece this year.
Okay. Well, and I know, you know, from experience too, I mean, and Chairman Blair certainly knows that double-digit increases right now in healthcare insurance, even for the largest of employers, is pretty commonplace. And unfortunately, much as we want to offer the best of the best benefits to our employees, and yeah, our teachers and our staff are so valuable, and maintaining those benefits is as well, but it is what it is. And at the end of the day, you know, you really do have to face some of those hard decisions. I know about passing the cost along. I'm just kind of curious to put it into perspective for me, just from the employer, the teacher's perspective. For instance, when we talk about this 1% in the dependent coverage that we're going to be passing on back to them, going from the 86 to the 85 to the 86, that the employer will be paying. If I'm a, you know, typical, say, you know, middle-aged employee with full family coverage, say I'm covering my spouse and children, what does that 1% really look like?
The same kind of conversation is what changed the state retirement. Where teachers used to be full paid retirement, where now it's kind of switching for the new employees, you know, to the 401k mix and that sort of thing. But this same thing that's happening here is the same thing that happened with retirement 2 years ago at the state level, so.
So full family coverage,
Because this is just what they're paying towards dependent coverage that's being changed in that 1% increment, right?
the overall, our copay plan,
Okay.
the total monthly cost is $1,786
Total.
total.
So ours,
The employee currently pays $250 and a penny for that. The net effect of this change, 13.4%, and shifting one more percentage point to the employee would be $53.75 a month, plus about $4 a month in the arrears charge.
So roughly a little over $300 a month, then from 250 to a little over 300. And just real quickly, touching back on the whole spouse coverage thing, and it does sound like maybe that's something that has been talked about, but it is something that I'm seeing a trend in the marketplace too, that, for instance, even my employer, when I went to work and became eligible for benefits, if my husband has access to group benefits elsewhere, he's not even eligible to be on our plan. And I know for some folks, especially when they have a really nice, healthy plan like I think we offer to our staff here, it's a difficult, unless your spouse works at Nissan or Bridgestone or something, it's a difficult pill to swallow because the coverage may not be as nice, but it is something that we're seeing, and certainly I think would be a more palatable possibility, I would think, than actually taking away from the benefits. But you have such a diversity of employees that, to some the premium's really important, to some that deductible's really important. So I'm assuming too that we're looking at different options that we can present the funding body with in terms of how we might better manage those dollars, whether it be through making plan adjustments themselves or adjustments to the premiums.
And Ms. Street is working with our consultant. We work with Cowan Benefits Consulting. I may have a name.
Eric Cowan's, yeah, they're good.
And, Jay will have some options for us to consider that need.
Thank you.
On the tech,
Did you have something? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to switch to technology, so
Yeah, let Mr. Hodge.
These insurance companies to look at reducing these costs. Does that make any sense?
We're self-insured, so.
We, we do. We discuss the different proposals that come up. An area that gets a lot of discussion is when there are proposals to expand the benefits, because most of us have been on the committee long enough to have that understanding of the rates we have been seeing and will probably continue to see. Often some of the cost reduction efforts are really, now if you have that issue, it's a major item, but to the overall plan, those items tend to be fairly small.
I guess just the way I sort of see it, seems like we're bearing more of the burden, and things are, I think, just my opinion, I think we cheapen the plan some, or we're cheapening the plan. It's costing us more money. And, what my concern is the county keeps growing, like it's growing. We're going to always be behind the 8 ball, and it's going to continue. We're going to continue to affect the employees with the insurance. I'm not big on taxes, just like everybody else is not, but I think that's the problem we got right now. We're just not, things aren't taken care of this year. And the employees are the most valuable thing we've got. And I feel like we've got to do our part to take care of them. And I hate to see it put more burden on them, and I hate to see us cheapen the claims and, or, cheapen their benefits.
Yeah.
And everything. So I don't know what the real solution is, but somewhere along the line, just like per pupil cost, we've got a good system for everyone top around. We all know that. If we do it for probably the taxpayer's best dollar. But I think as we keep going on year after year, with all the influx of people coming into the county, we're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And I just don't see this thing getting any better down the pike.
Do you have a technology question, Mr. Holliday?
I'm heading to technology.
We're gonna wait for a second. Go ahead, Ms.
Real
Moore.
quick, just to follow up to Mr. Hodges' remarks about, pushing back on the rates, and I understand that we're self-insured, but you mentioned earlier stop-loss carriers, so obviously we have stop-loss coverage at some point.
Yes.
I'm not sure what those levels are, if you can share with us, but out of the premium that we pay for our employees for the insurance, that $1,786 a month or what have you, how much of that premium is related to the actual stop-loss coverage versus paying our claims?
I will have to,
Okay. Because that would be, I think, where Mr. Hodges' question would come in is, you know, how much ability do we have to push back on the stop-loss carrier in terms of, hey, you know, we're big business, you know, we have a large number of employees and, you know, should be pretty competitive in the marketplace, and are there other stop-loss carriers that would be interested in our business? So, just curious.
And I wonder, you know, since we have a stop-loss carrier, you know, is this truly self-funded? It's actually partially self-funded if you look at it technically. And I guess my question is, because I know that when the county went to the partially self-funded program, it was to save dollars. Well, has that changed? Would a more traditional model be more cost-effective today than the county paying claims and paying for a stop-loss carrier too? I'm just wondering out loud if that model is still, you know, is still the savings vehicle that it once was.
when I have looked at the state plan in recent years, and I looked at it a lot last year, it still appears to me that our employees would pay more if we went to the state plan than by staying in our self-insured plan.
Okay.
So when you say state plan, it's a fully insured
State
plan then versus our,
It is also a self-insured state plan, but I'm sure they have some stop. I don't know if they have stop-loss
okay.
coverage built into that or not, but the state teachers plan, and then there is a related plan that is open to local governments. I think it's a separate group within.
When the insurance committee bids out the coverage, are there ever any alternative plans like a?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So
Well,
they go the full gamut, or they just look at a stop-loss
Oh,
opportunity?
when the bids come in, we will discuss back and forth. And it's an area where there's been a lot of discussion, especially by the commissioners on the committee, of, well, the downside to increasing our stop-loss limit that year when we have really bad claims history, and versus the cost of that premium. We have other administrative costs, of course, built in to our own plan.
Any other questions dealing with the medical part of it before we move on? Mr. Holliday has a technology question. Mr. Holliday.
Okay, so my recollection is Murfreesboro City System got 4 million,
They did 5 million, but that was their local funds they did.
5 local funds. They have 8,000 students.
They even had a little less than that at that time because they had the big growth this year. About 4 or 5.
5 million for 8,000 students, 7,500 students. We're requesting 3.15 for 41,500. We look at the medical insurance, we're at 8%. By Thursday, we may be at 13.4%. A month from now, we don't know where we'll be. And a year from now, you know, additional. Are we starting with the right number at 3.15 million for technology?
Well, you know, we need 3,667 computers based on our spreadsheet just to meet the minimum requirement. Now, that here's the other issue, and that's just not the cost of computers. Suppose you buy labs with laptops, Well, then, what we know that a lot of laptops will run hour and a half, 2 hours. So what you run into is the writing portion of the test, the things that's involved with that, consumes almost all of that. So how do you then get them charged up for the afternoon group coming in? I mean, just the daisy chaining, recharging piece of this is major also. Actually, the plug-in desktop situations are the more stable and stay charged, but we don't even have enough labs generally to put those in. So you're going to have the roll-around carts with the laptop some, but with that comes what I'm talking about.
I'm with you
Other
on all
issue.
of that. I just don't
That's
think
what runs your cost
3.15 is a
It's not.
okay. Then let's start the conversation with the I'll say appropriate number.
As we come back and look at this budget before we go to the commission, I think we're going to have some other numbers and things, and I certainly, if y'all want a motion to increase that, I mean, we certainly entertain that. This was what it was going to take base.
I understand, and I commend the staff for continuing what we always do. Man, we're going to pull it in right at the best possibly we can. We're going to slide by. We're going to achieve great things with just enough. That's great, but we can't start that conversation this way. We cannot start that conversation this way when Murfreesboro City pulls $5 million for 7,500 students. It's just, we're talking two different languages here. And we got to talk reality. We got to talk about our nickel plus on sustainability of technology. And we got to talk about a different number than 3.15.
You know, one of the things is just the way the law is written, because most of your retail establishments are in the city limits. Their share of that sales tax, you know, is higher. Plus they get the ADM share of students, plus because you have to come in the city to shop at the Avenue or buy your groceries generally and all. We don't, even though it's up, we do not generate as much sales tax as the city does. So when sales tax goes up, it's much more beneficial to them. That's just the way the law is written.
Continue.
Okay. Are you we kind of through with this sheet? We'll look at some real numbers. You want to go look at some real numbers?
I think it's time.
Look at, if you will, this is the one that you've got your colored sheet. Let's pull that one out before we kind of look at the others, because I think much of the others where you've got to go home and sit down and look at it. So what Jeff has done for us is kind of pull together a summary to look at. And you see your teachers there. Remember, and what's built into this is we have roughly 50 new teaching positions in it, but if a teacher's going to get a full, if it's 2.6 or 3.0, you're going to have the local money to match whatever the state is. That's what I'm talking about. So for all of those above the BEP, matching funds to make it work, you know, that increase there is $6,399,945. That's 4.9%. That includes, to try to get it, the increased positions plus the ones above the BEP plus increases also in the local portion. We're beginning to lose teachers. I'm going to tell you that. I also see it in career and technical education because, you know, when the economy was down, the people that came in, we're losing. I signed the culinary arts and the auto collision teacher, Stitch Creek, stuff like that. Leaving, one is actually a transfer, but when the economy picks up, the career and technical people in those positions, then industry and other business becomes attractive again, especially when they hadn't had any increase in 2 or 3 years or so. So we're seeing more transfers to some Williamson County, Davidson County, some other things, especially in the lower starting ends. But the career ladder, basically what that is, the state is no longer funding. We had some career ladder monies that was used for after-school programs, so the state's dropping that. They said y'all were free to continue it on your own money. So, I mean, we can't really do that if it's all switched basically to us to do that. Some of the other career ladder, basically is still people that receive the original career ladder still in place, and state funds that share that. That's that, $1,000 or $3,000, whatever it has to be based on the original career ladder. The guidance counselor there, school technology specialist, there's actually 4 STSs in there. The STSs, one of the issues is if you're going into this testing, you need somebody at the building that can work on that too. What's going to happen if you're in the middle of the test? So we have halftime in a lot of places where they kind of run. Most of our high schools have at least one STS. Will that stay? I don't know. We just see what we're talking about, and you'll see the numbers. As you kind of look down through the other numbers, you see the 3%, 4%, 5%, central office, maintenance, custodial staff, all the things that you see there. You got percentage, but look at your dollar increases, and you kind of begin to see what's the big increase in dollars in that whole first section. It's basically the teachers with the $6,399,000. So your growth there over all of that first categories is $8,987,409, or a 4.9% increase overall. The other things, which gets really interesting when you begin to look at that, because of the increased salaries and hiring a few more people, of course your unemployment, all of that's in there. For a district our size with some 4,700 employees, that's another $549,000. That's one of those fixed costs you can't do anything about. You have to pay it. The state retirement, for the people, our share of the state retirement, which is fixed, is a 5%. That's $862,000. And then this medical insurance that we're talking about, at the 8% estimate, is $3,902,000 there. So what you see on those fixed things about unemployment, retirement, and medical insurance, that section is a 7.4% increase, or over $5 million, that you can do almost nothing about. It's just what we have to do. So you kind of see overall about a 5.6. There's some new buses. There's 6 new buses right now in the current version, 2.8%, looking at that. Some on substitute. We're going to have to go up on utilities. Jeff will be bringing to you some transfer of funds, very cold year, some things like that. So additional unappropriated at the end of the year balance has to roll over to utilities. So increasing that budget so that it exceeds what we spent this year, $501,000 there. Trustees Commission. Mr. Doris Jernigan's not with us anymore, is he? But he used to talk about this a lot. That's what we are required, that $150,000 we have to share with the trustees at fixed percent.
And I've tried to continue that, but
that's a fixed. Again, you can't do anything about that. Some other instructional pieces there to try to help with instruction. Your student testing, that we do in some of our high school, Read 180, which to help with students that cannot read well in high school. There's some things there. We're working on some contracts, and my guess is, as Jeff says, some of those figures are going to down, some of those are going to go down a little bit. Mr. Zago's working on some things. We're probably going to have to stop some things that we've done in the past, but one of the things that was happening with the last year, the Race to the Top, we had a benchmarking program, a formative assessment called ThinkGate, that was a test that teachers could make the test, track the improvement of their students in class. My guess is much of that contract's going away. We replace it with something else that's cheaper or something, but I don't think we can sustain that. You remember in Race to the Top, and I was talking about with our advanced ed committee, that's one of the things they were amazed at. We only employed one person with our Race to the Top. We had Kevin Whittington, our data person, and we went through the years of that Race to the Top. And there's so many school systems. We purchased with our Race to the Top things that would last longer than that. You remember the elementary school, we bought manipulatives to teach math, that sort of thing. We put in the Compass software, credit grade recovery and tutoring for students, we purchase that. We have to pay the annual fee for it, but the things that we purchase with our Race to the Top are things that go on beyond the end of it. So it was not personnel in that, but some of those pieces, like the testing and some other things, now, if we were to keep it, would fall back on local. So that's what it's going to have to take a lot of scrutiny when you take a look at that, the numbers. But the technology, the other yellow line down there, technology and testing changes, that $3,148,000, which again, it would be somewhat bare minimum. When you look at that, when you go back to 13-14, see that $2,120,000 on the far right column under your technology? You remember we got the one-time state monies.
Yeah.
They gave us the $2 million. And what we did there is we increased bandwidth and we put the Wi-Fi networks in the buildings so that you could use laptops and other things. So with the number of buildings and all that we had, we spent almost most of it on infrastructure. Some computers were purchased at that time, but mostly on infrastructure.
And with the nature of changing technology, incredible wisdom right there. We put in the highway for the technology to run on while delaying the decision as to what hardware should be brought in until we have to make that decision so that we can bring in state-of-the-art hardware. Had we invested that $2 million in hardware, it would be 2 years out of date right now. We put it in the right place. We did the right thing.
We got over 1,600 access points put in our schools with that money.
Yes.
We actually piloted 2 different Wi-Fi systems, if you remember early on, which one works, which one didn't. We actually found one works much better than the others. We had better capacity, more stable to do that. But, you know, the instructional equipment here, which is some regular things too, but the computer replacement cycle, if we don't get some pennies on the tax rate, you're looking at about a 15-year replacement cycle. I mean, when we started, I served on the original committee. It was 10 years. Technology, but we're nowhere in this world of trying to, you know, and I really, as we had the opportunity to meet with Mayor Burgess, Mr. Will Jordan talked about that. Our sell point was, if we could get that 2 or 3 cents that rolls every year, now it's going to take monies this year to pull it off. $600,000 a penny, 2 pennies is not going to do this year. I mean, it's not. You're $3 million away. I mean, just to do the minimum. But if we can get 2, 3 cents or so on that, then it's kind of like the money we have for our roofing, that sort of thing's in place. Once we've done that, they don't have to go back and debate each year. So this year we don't have any monies from it, so you get more leaks, and the next year you need 1.5 times or something. It would be so much better for them if they would just commit to 3 pennies, 4 pennies, whatever on that, and keep our technology up, train our kids, and not have to debate it every year.
Absolutely.
You know, and it would increase as the tax, 600,000 that becomes 650,000 or 700,000. Then you have some natural growth that occurs as the value of the property changes.
The last time we were together as a board, Mr. Young said that we should think about the possibility of writing some legislation, and I'm looking at the school technology specialist. If we had 1 school technology specialist per building, would that be a good scenario?
The last, it would certainly help. I mean, the principal would tell you in a heartbeat, yes. But if you remember the last time we had to cut back, when Mr. Watson was here, and some of those cutbacks that we lost, how many employees?
131.
131 employees. We can't take them out of the classroom, pupil-teacher ratio. Kind of went through the office up here, found some, and then the other was a lot of STSs and stuff. So we actually lost a lot of people. We've actually had more than we got now as a ratio.
What I'm driving at is if our state legislature is looking at putting in testing, they're looking at specific legislation that has to do with how often and in what capacity we have testing, then it would be appropriate, because we've just said right here, the school technology specialist, we could have a shared position until we have online testing. But when we got online testing and we have a problem at a school, we need a school technology specialist there right then. And it would be an appropriate addendum to the discussion of online testing and whatever savings that would be over paper testing, to have that funds from the state fund a school technology specialist, one per building. Let the state put that in place when they put in whatever testing mandate they want to do. I don't know, maybe that's an idea we'll share with the state legislator who will listen to us.
The STS kind of parallels a little bit what Nissan, the Mechatronics thing. You know, what drove the Mechatronics was it basically, if something breaks down online, and the person that was electrical down there, nope, that's not it, go get the pneumatic guy, no, it's not me, then go get the mechanics guy. And so the Mechatronics, the whole thing is that they want to send one person down there to fix it and evaluate it and do it. And that's kind of what the same thing kind of with your STS is. You got multi-skilled people that can help you with your instruction, but they also can run some simple test things on that computer to see if it can be fixed more quickly and then put back in operation. So it's really the same thing that business and industry is doing, in all honesty. So you get to the blue line, kind of the subtotal, and you begin to look at the numbers are large, but again, you're looking at about a 6.7% is what you're looking at in your numbers. Jeff, you want to explain some of the bottom where you put the other kind of notes down there, non-staff benefits? Let me turn it over to you and let you talk about that and the above line percents, if you want to explain those two lines to them.
The third of the pink lines is just subtotal staff and benefits. One of the things we kind of talk about each year is how little discretionary, and yes, we have discretion, but once we hire a teacher, once we make that decision, we have to have 20, 40 teachers to handle our growth. We don't have much discretion there. But the yellow items below that are items over which we don't have a lot of latitude. We have some latitude. But if you from these, the blue line is the subtotal for non-labor benefit expenditures. In this draft, 58.8 million. This year's budget to date, 52.7 million. Well, the increase in technology for testing is the biggest increase there. After that, utilities and transportation. But below the double-scored line where I show total expenditures, subtotal highlighted expenditures, 2 lines below the blue. So we've got those highlighted expenditures, 43 million in this draft, 38.5 million in this year's amended budget. The remaining non-staff, non-benefit items, those items that aren't highlighted, are down to 15.7 and 14.2 million. Under 5% of our budget, we really have much latitude on. And we don't have a lot of latitude on that. Other maintenance and custodial expenditures, 4.2 million in this draft. If we don't make those expenditures, we'll pay for it later on, or our schools will not be at an acceptable standard. There is not a lot of discretion in our budget that is this large. We put most everything we can first into the teaching staff and then into the schools. There are 2 lines I did want to comment on back up higher. This, under the first pink line, payroll taxes and unemployment, percentage-wise, that's only up 3.7%. That is because I think they're calling it a caption charge, but basically the tax that is part of the Affordable Care Act, this year was $44 per covered life. Next year it drops to $27. That's why that line is not 4.9 or 5%, because we do have that tax that is dropping off and will go away entirely next year. The textbook line item, we are not going to be able to order our math books. So basically, we have repeated the budget number for next year. Those funds that we currently have budgeted for the math textbooks will go to fund balance. We'll basically be taking them back out and amending them. That's why the dollar item shows the same. Mr. Odom can explain why we won't be going.
Well, basically, you didn't, you know, that you don't have really firm standards. I did see where Williamson County was going ahead and buy, you know, but the state gave us the option by adopting everything, you could roll it to the next year, and hopefully, we're looking at the integrated math, that hopefully there'll be some better textbooks for us to review next year that integrates your, which is Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, to integrate that together. Next year's adoption with textbooks happens to be, luckily, one of the years it's not a lot of as much new money. A lot of those career and technical education, a number of those you put a set of books in a classroom, you know, and kids come and go all day because they're referencing something. You're not always sending one home. So we think that $5 million or so there may be able to let us do the math and handle the next year's career and technical adoption.
When do we meet again for budget?
The 10th, and he meets the 11th of April.
It'll be the
isn't it?
7th
Have you moved it?
for our budget.
Well, it may be after your meeting if we do then. So we may have a BEP estimate by then.
The next budget is the 13th?
I'm sorry, no, I'm on the wrong one. This is 7th of April.
Okay, so we won't,
Or we have the BEP
you won't have
estimate.
a BEP estimate. But we can still talk about several things here.
I didn't have my calendar with me, I'm sorry,
I
Mr.
do, and I missed that.
Could we share with you quickly some of this sheet, which is your summary sheet? It's a line item, major category line item. And then, of course, you've got your breakdown that's 31 pages is really by line item. Talk about a few highlights there. If you want to grab that one, we'll talk a little bit about it. Because this shows your position increase. Where are your people? What's the changes there? Let you kind of look at that. Looking at the 116 teachers there, I said 50 positions earlier. That's really, if you want to make yourself a footnote, it's about 41 regular ed and 9 special ed there. That's kind of the breakdown, the way it stands right at this moment. The accountants and bookkeepers, line 119 and 162 kind of go together. Jeff had to shift some positions there because of the way they're counted in the budget. Line item numbering changes. Jeff, you want to tell them about that one? So that's all in the schools, what it is.
Yeah. In re-examining those positions, and it was mostly at the elementary schools, truing up grade structure and size of school and the clerical staff, secretary, bookkeeper, attendance, and just the way the numbers worked out, more hours. At a small school in the old days, we would have had one person charged to the secretary line. As the schools grew, some of the larger ones had a separate bookkeeper. Some of them had a separate attendance person or a part-time attendance person. Well, not equalizing, reallocating those hours so that the same size school, elementary school, has the same clerical hours available, led to those changes between them. It adds about 3 total positions.
Jeff does full-time equivalent,
Yeah.
which you're aware of. You've heard him say that before. And looking at your hours. The line 120, it's computer programmers, but it's basically Steve Solomon, them back there in the hardware, the cable pullers and the people doing that sort of thing. So they requested a position for that. We actually had to bid out some stuff before and do off-site because we didn't have enough people to do it. We kind of look at the what you used to say, the SACS ratio, the ratio of guidance counselors all, right now in this accreditation ratio, we'd need about 3 to put us where we need to be there. Again, that's not, you don't have to do that, but it is tied to that formula that deals with the number of pupils and the other. Medical personnel, 7/10 of a nurse. One of the things that he is talking about there and dealing with that is, we're doing a lot of PRN, you know, on-call nursing. So this is mainly an increase in that to handle the PRN. You know, one of the things, if we have a handicapped kid that goes on a field trip and they have to have a nurse, guess who has to go? We either got to do a PRN or send a nurse, and that would leave the school without anybody. So, you know, we now, in handicapped situations, have to send those, so.
I think Dr. Burns wanted to know what a .7 nurse looked like.
Well, it's really PR, it's really, I mean, how many hours, it's extra hours to cover that PRN that you pay them hourly to come in and go, either go on a field trip or whatever that you're doing to cover that. Or if somebody's sick or out or something, she has to call a replacement, you know, because we've got a high needs child there. You have to do that. It's just a business thing. Instructional computer personnel, line 138, that's those STSs. Okay. That's what that is. The assistant principal, basically half, is basically the other half at John Coleman. We gave them a half. You remember before, she's half at, still coaching some and half the other to try to make that a position for them as an assistant principal. That's what that is. Not that we still got, schools got no assistant principals out there, you know. That's just what we got. But again, how much can we get through the budget? The .3 secretaries is some balancing again, basically. And then 162 is going with that line 119 above. Educational assistance. All of those are for special ed. And 4 of those are coming because it's not federally funded. There are people already here, but they're dropping from federal funding to local funding. So of those 8.4, 4 of those are just shifts in the funding.
And we do have some ESL.
Yes, ESL, yeah. I mean, switching, when you have less federal monies for that, you shift it, or there existing people, that's what we're talking about, generally. Maintenance, Mr. Clardy and them have asked for Stewart's Creek High, you have your first couple of years and things covered. You ask for 2 additional maintenance personnel for our 46 schools. That's what those 2 are. Speech and language, that one position there, that person's already working, but was paid federal, now it's got to be picked up local. So that's what that is. That's not really adding one, that's just a shift from the federal to the local. And the other wages and salaries there, 189. And McCraw was part-time this year. If we add 4/10 back for somebody to separate some of the testing and the teacher, all of our in-services and planning for that, go back to a full-time position there. It would take 4/10 of a position to do that. Because with her, when she retires and leaves us this year, you're not going to get somebody to come in very likely and do half-time with what's required for that. So there's your number of positions. Your total is 74.4, part of which comes from federal shift over, or a 1.9% increase in basically your people. That's what you're talking about. That's not much increase. We're probably going to have more students in that increase. You take the total number of people looking at it. So the other pages, again, typically are not in this summary, are not positions, but it's one of those things, again, that you kind of got to go home, sit down in the chair and look over one line item at a time. We'll answer any questions or talk about it tonight if you would like, but you may want time to study it.
You got some serious reading. Some of the more capable math majors may bring out their calculators too. So. Mr. Hodge.
On those principal requests you sent us today, how does it work into this scenario, or
They are not in there. We use those more to assess where we should go. The big area, very easy one to answer, is the maintenance and repair projects. Gary uses those as input in,
He prioritizes, he takes the request and prioritizes what he does with his maintenance monies to do that.
I understand that, but I guess the question I've got, at this point, he doesn't know where he's gonna go with it. Is he gonna work, I guess, because some of them got some pretty good figures in there. And I know it'd be up to him, but I don't wanna cut him short on his other stuff. But
Well,
maybe-
he's been doing this for several years.
I understand that, but, I just wanna make sure it's built into it.
We usually do what we can.
Looks like you got a little bit more this year than what you paid, I guess is where I'm going with it.
Any principal worth their salt is gonna put in what they think they need. We just, basically, are probably not gonna be able to do it all. So what's wish list, what's got to be. But I don't criticize them at all for turning in what they need. That's what, one of the things they do.
I think they did turn it in, I just wanna make sure if they turn it in, he feels like he needs it, that he gets the money to do it.
And Mr. Zago also used it, when we have some of the title monies that we get. Title II is teacher training and things like that, where we share, some, you'll see things like that. But very often the things that we're not able to do, you know, I mean, just the projectors now. I don't know how much you know what a projector bulb costs. Tell them, Mr. Spurlock, what a,
$200, good 220, something like that.
you know, the one that hangs from the ceiling? You can almost buy the whole device.
Would that be the line item that says lighting and sensors? I was wondering about
The
that.
lighting and the sensors is something else. We do need to explain that to our
Yes.
new people.
Almost $250,000, so.
Let's talk about that. That's the obligation to what we do. Talk about that, because we do have new board members, so that's new.
well, and that is, and the increase in that, I meant to mention the increase in that, we are looking, Mr. Clardy and his department have applied for another series of loans, energy conservation projects through Energy Efficient Schools Initiative. And what we started doing, 8 or 9 years ago, the commission borrows the money, but we have to commit to pay it out of our budget for our energy conservation procedures. And this is a new, at some point late next year, we will be paying off the next to the last set of notes that we incurred.
Which was the sensors to turn the lights
Yeah.
off in the buildings and that sort of thing. And then
Yeah.
your plumbing thing that changes
Yes.
out the front for lower flow, water usage and all. This is those fixed costs is kind of tied with the money that was borrowed to be paid
Yeah.
back. Hopefully from savings, that's what you,
Yeah.
hope you saved enough to do that.
And we do have, I met with Ron Graham and Jeff Stacy a couple of weeks ago, and we are, because of the grant that we got last year, which funded Mr. Stacy's job initially, we are starting to build that history of showing okay, yes, our electricity dollars are up, but our usage is down slightly. We're starting to have more documentation. It was kind of anecdotal. I would look at one school's, and I've had a staff member maintain a spreadsheet. Well, it was manual before I came here, but looking at usage and cost. Well, it's through Mr. Graham's, the way it's set up, it's a little more sophisticated, looks at demand charges and all that, and seeing some reduction in our usage, even though rates have gone up. So we'll be getting into some of that, and there will be a new proposal we should hear weeks. Yeah. Yeah.
This $800,000 would fund more digital control systems so that we have control of the systems in the school from over the computer via the internet, so that we can program those schools to shut down, operating at night, different things like that.
It's like the Nest thermometer that you can buy for your home now over the internet, right? It does kind of the same thing. You can turn your temperature up or down.
A lot of these systems are about $80,000 for schools, so we'll just,
As we pour into this, Mr. Sandvig, I'm sure you'll get some emails, or phone calls at least.
Well, and this package, it's a 3-year funding package, isn't it? I don't know.
the payback, we don't have any payback on that is longer than 3.5 years.
So, but we'll be bringing that forward, and I went ahead and stuck some dollars in this version.
You will very likely also, maybe as you saw at the convention and others, there's lots of people like to come in and do your custodial services for a fee. One of the things that's different from ours, which they show some numbers and savings, but our custodians change the ballast out in the buildings. They also paint buildings inside. So, I mean, it's not all pure savings when you look at that, because then you're gonna have to turn around and hire people over in maintenance and give them a truck and drive them there and this, that, and the other. If you're gonna switch that from being able to fix it in-house to out-of-house, unless where city has the custodial service, and, I mean, there's opinions about that, but again, anyway, it's not dollar for dollar. So when these people approach you, what's the job description of the people who are filling those positions is another factor.
We have high school custodians that are at least a level 3 maintenance person, the lead is in each one of them. So that's why they changed light bulbs, changed ballasts, did door lock work, types of things.
You know, that's critical to do that. Even when we were moving snow back in the winter, we could expect our custodians to come in and help shovel the snow and get it off where you can start back to school. Guess what? If you got a contract for custodial services, what? Shoveling snow is not in my contract, or moving that. I do dirt in the building. So, I mean, it's not straightforward. They'll sell it to you that way, but it's not.
No. Full-time equivalent, 236. And most of them are 12 months. So we probably have 260, maybe. There's some 10 months and some part-times.
You no longer have a retirement program, but that's very difficult.
Changes in medical insurance.
Right. Changing medical insurance, and then if they are rehired, their attitude is such that the quality of the job is usually not as good as it was.
All right, next budget meeting is April the 7th at 5 o'clock. And we got quite a few numbers to inspect and question and get more information about. So is there anything else tonight before we adjourn? Hearing none. See you, I think, Wednesday for the accreditation exit interview. Okay. Okay. Well, we will be adjourned.